All right, so how to expand in your expository paragraphs. So first of all, just a little disclaimer. This was developed by Anne Stone, and she is really, really awesome. Okay, so what you do is you start off, obviously, with the prompt, and then you move. So this prompt from last year, write an essay explaining whether it is important to laugh. And through the process, you end up coming up with a working thesis statement. So the working thesis statement I came up with is laughter helps us deal with hardships. Okay, so in my ideas of laughter helps us deal with hardships, I'm going to come up with a lot of different times where laughter helped me do that. So I can think about when Mimi died. I can think about the conference I just went to, and probably about, somewhere around 5 different things. I could use my help chart to help me, whatever it's going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and use my example and write my example at the top of the conference I just attended. And specifically the closing speaker. Conference. Okay, so in this first section is going to be listing. So all I'm going to do is list every single thing I know about that conference session that I went to. So we have, she wasn't experienced. She wasn't an experienced teacher. She was kind of thrust into first grade. There was a lot of crying involved. And let's see what else she did. She talked about the letters that she wrote the kids. She talked about how you don't need to be a student teacher. You don't have to know everything about about how to teach. What you need to do is show the children that you care. And this one was so funny. She was telling this story that was actually a very, very sad story about the phone call from one of her former students. Let's see, what else did she write about? There were some really funny things she said about her divorce, so I'm going to put that down. So I'm going to think about everything that I can remember about this session. Wasn't experienced, first crying, What did she do? Oh, the phone call, he went to the military. After, he's a survivor. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm going to do. I'm going to list. So here's the thing to know. If I were to put something up top, right, and I get to listing, and I can't really list a lot of things. So, like, let's say you put down something, like one of the biggies that gets put down is, like, Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, and you realize you only know 2 things about those people, you really shouldn't use them. So that's the idea with the listing is if you can't list a whole bunch of stuff, if you're like, wow, I don't actually know anything about this, that's when you go, whoop, never mind, let me do a different piece of paper and do it on a different subject. And that's totally okay because that means that you have figured out that that would be actually a bad example. Okay, so next one is going to be a snapshot, which we're familiar with those. Snapshot, to remind you, the opposite of a thought shot. So thought shot is all the feelings and emotions and the thoughts going on in your head. Snapshot is everything that happens outside of. So I'm going to think about the speaker, and I'm going to write my snapshot. And you go ahead and do this too. Let's see. Okay, so this one is a room of hundreds of educators buzzed with laughter as Miss Silver described the absolute catastrophe that was her first year teaching. Our eyes watered with unshed tears of mirth and then flowed as she recounted the story of a former student's sad tale that took a change for the better. Upon reading the letter she had written him in third grade, keeping him not only from killing, not only preventing him is what I should say. Let me fix it as I revise. Prevent him from killing himself and also leading him onto a civil military career. So virtually this thing that she had done, that's such a sad story, but she said it with so many jokes. It was so funny. This letter she had read really impacted his life. Okay, so the third one that our dear friend Anne Stone, who's pretty awesome, that Anne Stone found to be effective in showing up in 3s and 4s and essays was the what if. So the what if is what happens if, right, explaining the opposites. We could do the opposite of Starling if she hadn't said this in a funny manner, like what it would have happened, or in the case of, like, you know, if you're doing like Martin Luther King, if he hadn't gone and marched, if he hadn't done his speeches, like what would have been the terrible ramifications. So the what if is it can be, it doesn't have to start with if, but it can easily start with if. So if this speaker had not captured our hearts through such lively storytelling, we would have left on a much somber tone. Her humor energized us for the demanding career that is teaching. Okay, so what you would do then is you would do your own what if, your own snapshot, your own listing if you haven't already done that. And then you're going to box. So you can box either one or two of them. So looking at this, when I think of what will I want my expository paragraph to include, is it this, is it this, is it this, or a combination thereof? So I'm going to go ahead and think for my expository, which is try to show laughter helps us deal with hardships. I feel like the snapshot is probably going to be very similar, but I also feel like the what if was really powerful. So when I write my paragraph, it's not necessarily these exact words in my expository essay, but I'm going to kind of think about, okay, how can I use some of this information from snapshot, some of this information from the what if? So I might go back and just use, I might just actually use that line of my what if. I might only use a little, I might leave off the part about her catastrophe of her first year teaching. So it's just pre-writing for the eventual paragraph. But the idea is that it helps give depth and meaning in expanding and elaborating upon the subject.